The Alfie Whattam podcast.
Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, awesome. All right, so let's start with, in 2017, you wrote a Medium blog post on Michael Jordan. I'm going back right now. This is deep research, man. This was about the principles which allowed Michael Jordan to achieve greatness. Okay, work back in your memory to this point, almost a decade ago or whatever. Now, one of these principles was always have your hands up because the ball could be coming your way any second. I thought that was awesome. Can you tell me a little bit more about that principle, why you chose to include that in the blog post?
Yeah, I think, going back to that point in time, I love sport. I draw a lot of what I do in the business world to like a sports field, and I love the NBA. So that's sort of where that comes from to start with. Now, particularly with that particular reference, more comes down to like opportunities come up, and when those opportunities arise, you should be ready. And so from memory, I haven't looked back at that blog post probably since I posted it.
Sure.
That would be what I'm getting at, is like, particularly in the startup world, as you will well know, like the opportunities come at you when you, maybe sometimes when you don't expect it.
Yeah.
The key thing is to be ready for when those happen. I mean, you can even look at like an obvious one, like when COVID happened, there were some startups that did really, really well at the back of that. Things like Zoom, Miro, the ones that allowed for asynchronous communication or remote working, because they were ready and ready for that wave. That's at like a macro level, but like on a day-to-day basis, there are things that come up that might get in the way of like, here are the things that you might have wanted to do with your day. But if you're ready for those like micro opportunities when they happen, then over time those build into something pretty awesome in a lot of cases. So that's, I think, the point that I'm getting at with that particular blog post. Again, I was probably 24 at the time, and and trying to seem more, more wise than I am.
Sure, I liked it. I thought that was a good analogy. You know, COVID, most people were completely taken by surprise, everybody, but a certain percentage of people were ready for that opportunity. It reminds me of NVIDIA with the whole AI rise at the moment. You know, they've been doing GPUs for a long, long time, well below Intel, and now they were ready. They had their hands ready for the ball. AI came at them, ChatGPT is here, and then boom, they just kind of took off. So, I appreciate what you're saying there. I do like sharing principles, and another principle that you shared a couple of years ago on Twitter, actually. You wrote that, this might be again your 24-year-old trying to be wise, but you wrote, we are not defined by what happens to us, rather we are defined by how we react. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, on a day-by-day basis, there are a whole bunch of good and bad things that happen to us, and how we respond, I think, when those bad things happen is more typically. Those are the things that, based on the quote, I think really define us. So, if we use that same example of what when something like COVID hits, okay, this is a bad thing in a lot of ways, but okay, how can we respond in a way that is going to be advantageous to people around us, to us? Yeah. But I'll use a more real example. I have run my own startup. I have got to the point of selling my own startup, but before I sold that startup, we had to close that business down. So this is not a glamorous like exit where you go and then buy a boat and sail around the Mediterranean for years. Like, that's not what this is. This was very much a sale of technology that worked, but the business itself had failed. Yeah. At that point in time, when we made the decision that this was a business that we should close down, we didn't close down that business because we ran out of cash. We didn't close down that business because there was some other catastrophic problem. It was we didn't believe that this business was going to work anymore based on how it had been set up. And the best thing to do for everybody was to close the business down, try and sell the IP, give the remaining money back to investors if there's any left.
Yeah.
And that decision was incredibly hard. And in the wake of so there's a whole bunch of things that led to that particular decision, and then we had the choice of okay, this is a very, very hard decision to make.
Yeah.
We can make this now, or we can do what actually would probably be the easier option, is to downsize the team, make this cash last longer, and just almost delay the inevitable. But that would, and just slowly trickle off, and eventually people just wouldn't hear about us, and then it would just sort of die a very slow, painful death.
Sure.
Now the harder option was to do what we ended up going with, and that was closing the business down. And then it was also that equally hard thing was to talk about it. And so, and that was how we chose to react. And this is obviously a good example of it, I think, because I had something very painful happen to me, and I did something that also was going to cause me more pain, was to talk about it openly, and in doing so, hopefully help a lot of people, which turns out it did. And the amount of messages that I received, and I still receive, in accordance with the fact that I shut a tech startup down publicly, apparently the first to do so, or to do it in that way in Australia and New Zealand, led to a lot of good. Not directly, obviously, for the investors in that particular business, but for the ecosystem more generally. And so I think that comes down to that, that quote of I got hit with a massive uppercut, and didn't pull out of the fight, was still keep going in a way that makes sure that you, last to the end of the round, for lack of a better analogy.
Yeah. No, I like that. I mean, a lot of people would, just let it vanish quietly. They don't want the fear of looking like something's failed publicly. But in reality, being vulnerable, being authentic, being genuine in public, that's what allows you really to connect to people at the end of the day. And people get it the complete wrong way around, I find, in the social media world that we live.
Yeah, totally. I think there are different times when, on the vulnerability part, there are different times when it's, say, even with your teams, if you're thinking specifically about the team that you run within a tech startup, there are times when being vulnerable is really important. There are times when also you probably want to dilute some of the vulnerability, because you need to be a source of strength for your team. And it's deciding on when and where to do that. Always be authentic, but the vulnerability part, it's be vulnerable when it's appropriate to, and then you need to also show a degree of strength, particularly when so much what we do is so uncertain.
Hey, this podcast is brought to you by WeLoveAlpha.com. If you're looking to grow and hire and scale your software engineering team in the UK, then go to WeLoveAlpha.com to hire the best software developers on the market. Everything across Java to C# to PHP to Python to React and Angular and mobile and more. Go to WeLoveAlpha.com to hire the best software engineers in the UK now.
Yeah. Okay, so a few years on from those posts, in 2018, you posted an article on LinkedIn which shared Jeff Bezos' view on work-life balance. Now, you agreed with Jeff's perspective and added your thoughts to this, and you wrote that when our work brings purpose and meaning, it's not about balancing, rather it's about work-life integration, so that we can do the things that we love and that we can love the things that we do. So I agree, but for the people that are watching and listening, can you tell us a little bit more about why work-life balance is not the answer, but work-life integration is a better way of doing it?
Yeah, so you're digging right into the archives. But I still believe this, and I think before jumping into that, I think there's I listened to a really interesting TED Talk this morning, actually, on this very thing that, every day you're morphing and becoming a slightly different person, and your opinions are changing. At a cell level, you're obviously changing, but also like at a mental state, you are changing over time.
Every few years, your body and your brain is like a completely different, like literally in every single way. So, to say to somebody you've changed, it's 100% true. They have changed, like literally.
Totally. And some of the stuff that I guess you're probably going to dig up, some of it I'm not going to agree with anymore. But in this particular case, I still do, and I hope my future self will as well. Where what I mean by this, I guess, is like I see so many people who go to work 9 till 5, 9 till 6, whatever it is, and work is means to an end for them, and I don't believe that is the way to live. Now, I know that's a very privileged thing to say, and what I mean by like we just spend so much time at work, man, and I personally don't want to go to work. I don't want to feel like I have work. I want to feel like I'm working towards something bigger than myself, that I am going to add value to a whole bunch of people, and I'm going to do it with other great people, and collectively, the what's that saying around, like, the 1 + 1 does not equal 2, it's like 1 + 1 is 4 in those scenarios. Like that's the stuff that I want to do. To do that, you can't have work-life balance, I don't think. I think you end up having like a work-life integration. I mean, that I'm working on a very exciting project that I can't talk about just yet.
Top secret.
And as part of that, like some of the times of some of the calls that we do with various people, like tomorrow, my day's going to start at 7 a.m. It's going to finish at about 10 p.m. Is that work-life balance? No way. But what I'm able to do amongst that is I like to exercise. I'm going to exercise in the middle of the day. I might take some downtime for a walk in the middle of the day as well. And that allows me to integrate the work with still achieving the stuff that I want to in my personal life. And if I took the approach of work-life balance, would I do that or pick up this exciting project? Probably not, because I'd be like, well, no, it's invading my mornings and my evenings.
Sure.
But in this case, no, I can still have my personal time by integrating what I need to do from a work perspective. And the other thing is, I think you can have work-life integration when you love what you do, so you don't actually feel like you're working. It's just an exciting thing to be working on. Yeah.
No, I'm with you. I work out and exercise with my wife, and it's work. We're working on something, but we're doing it together. It's balance. She's involved in the business and helping me do stuff, so it's not like there's a separation for me either. And I find that if there was a separation, I would start to dislike the work a little bit more because it wouldn't feel like play. It would feel like a chore, if that makes sense. What about the people that disagree with me and you and think like that kind of saying promotes like a toxic hustle culture sort of thing where you're always on and you never switch off? What would you say to people that have that opinion?
I think there are the opposite argument is I think equally valid for a lot of people, and I'd even say probably my wife is more of a hey, try not to bring work home, and she still enjoys what she does, but she likes to time box her stuff. And I think people are different, and people want different things out of life, and that's completely cool. I would say that one thing about having this work-life integration from a personality type is I struggle to sit still. I try to be as present as I can be when I'm at doing various things. But if I go away on a holiday for a month, 18 months ago, I took 6 months off, and my wife and I, we travelled around. We did 4.5 months of bumming around the Mediterranean, going to each beach that we could. And at about the 3-month mark, I was just so itchy to get my hands on a project with other people that was just going to be too hard of a thing for me to do by myself. That's my personality, so I want to be doing this stuff. And I think if equally you might be someone who has a different approach and a different desire of what you want out of life. And I think that's probably the most important thing, is figuring out what it is you want from life itself. to work in like, okay, how do you want your work to reflect this, your personal life? Is it something you want to like mesh together, which is what I've done. But for a lot of other people, they might want to keep that completely separate, and I think that's cool. It's up to the individual to decide on what it is they want.
Yeah. Somebody else that's a very hard worker is Steve Jobs, and you had a newsletter called Save Your Startup a few years ago. You shared a quote from Steve Jobs in this. He said that people think focus means saying yes to the things that you've got to focus on, but that's not what it means at all. It's about saying no to the 100 other good ideas. Can you talk a little bit more about what Steve Jobs is saying there?
Yeah, so there are a plethora of opportunities, of ideas that one can pursue, and every thing that comes across your desk or a message, whatever it is, that gives you a new form of like idea or task or whatever it is, can cause huge distraction and the opportunity cost of the mental capacity thinking about that very thing. And so I just think it's, like, if you even go back like a step of like where that's coming from, so I suspect it might be the post about validating, keeping the main thing, I think might be the
Stephen Covey quotes. Yeah.
Might be where that's come from. And when you don't know what the main thing is, when you haven't defined what that main thing is to you, and you're not almost time boxing, like here is 80% of my time should be spent on the main thing. Sure, I can explore these other things, but if you allow that exploration into new ideas, new initiatives, to outweigh, even get close to spend the same amount of time on what the main thing is, then you're doing yourself a massive disservice, and you're causing lots of distraction. And you see it all the time in tech startups I think sometimes their mental models are just off, and you don't truly understand why they're so important to have, why like a framework is so important to have, until you get it wrong yourself. There's some quote around like, when you learn from someone else's mistakes, you gain wisdom. When you learn from your own mistakes, you gain experience.
Yeah. So true.
And I think it's sometimes very hard to truly like gain that wisdom from other people's mistakes, and so you go ahead and you make your own mistakes and you gain that experience. And I know I did this, I know many startups do this, where if you don't have like a specific defined problem that you are fixing, and then you don't define who you're solving that for, and you don't have a way to validate that both the problem and who the problem you're solving it for is, then you end up in these scenarios where like an opportunity may come along and you're like, oh yeah, I might actually explore that, and you spend half a day exploring that type of thing, and that happens to you 5 times a week, then half your week's gone. It's like if I said to you, Alfie, you should build a recruitment platform. And the number of people that might even say that to you. And
I get pitched it every single week. Yeah. But no, inch wide, mile deep approach, laser focus, conquer one thing, and then delegate and scale to build other things, but don't try and do step 10 before you do step 1.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, if you go back to Jeff Bezos was like approaching with Amazon, he wanted to like conquer be the department store for the world.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what the mission was at the start, but maybe it seems something like that. But it started with books.
Yeah, and that was it, just books.
And okay, now everyone knows Amazon's a place to get books. What is it next? Oh, there's DVDs?
Yeah, music, DVDs, and now everything. But he didn't start with everything.
Yeah.
He built a product which was a feature of some other person's huge platform, but he did that feature better than anybody else.
Yeah.
And rather than trying to take on the world, do what Facebook did and start in a university, and then it spreads.
Yeah. And so I think that particular quote, you can apply to not just your startup, but you can apply to your life, can't you? With what are the key things to you, and if you're constantly saying even yes to like social engagements, then are you going to develop depth of friendships with all of those people? No, you're not. So is there is there some things that you potentially should be saying no to so you can spend more time with the people that, the top 5 people that you really want to be spending your free time with?
Hey, really quick video just to give you a free subscription to Coder magazine. Coder is the #1 publication for all the latest tech news, expert insights, and exclusive industry interviews. With Coder, you get the inside scoop on what's happening with Elon Musk, with Bill Gates, with Jeff Bezos, with Mark Zuckerberg, and so much more. So if you work in the technology industry, then I'd highly recommend that you give Coder a read today. Just scan the QR code on the screen for free access now, or go to welovealpha.com/magazine to get your free subscription today. Yeah. One thing that I did recently, which really helps with the time perspective, is I've started putting everything in my calendar. And I mean everything. So I've got sleep scheduled. I've got, wake up, shower, dress, eat, walk the dog, everything. And I don't stick to that, schedule, religiously. It's not some kind of army doctrine sort of thing, but I try and follow it as a framework. But the reason why it's good to have it in there recurring, Mike, is because it shows me how little time I actually have to work. I've got a little bit of time in the morning in between finishing the morning routine and having a quick lunch, and then a little bit of time in the evening before I've got to, work out and focus on the missus and the kid and everything. And then that little window, if I didn't see it visually like that to me, I'd just, go off on tangents and I'd start focusing on this project and chasing that. But the person that chases 2 rabbits, they catch neither of them, really. And I don't know if this is what Steve was talking about, but I know when he got fired from Apple and when he came back, he really stripped down the product line and got rid of everything apart from a couple of core products. And say no to the things. The other day, Apple announced that they have cancelled their electric vehicle project, which they've spent 10, 20 years building, thousands of people working on it, billions invested, but they've got rid of it to focus on Gen AI, because obviously they see that more as something to say yes to. So. Yeah. It's interesting. Another thing that Steve Jobs said, which you also shared in a different article, was when you're in a startup, the first 10 people will determine whether the company succeeds or not. Now, obviously, top secret project, we won't talk about what you're doing right now, but I think that applies quite nicely to the situation. So when you're in a startup, the first 10 people will determine whether the company succeeds or not. Can you tell me a little bit more about that idea?
Yeah, totally. And I can even say, when I've built a startup from zero previously as well, that those first 10 people, they're defining your culture. So there's obviously many elements to this, but I think the first one is you're hiring for attitude, you're hiring for grit. The people you're doing to do business with are those. And so initially you're looking at founders, okay, if we were starting a business, we'd be looking at starting point, do we have complementary skill sets?
Sure.
And then it's do we like one another? And hopefully both of those are yeses. And then it's do we have the humility to be able to have, both of us have that humility to have a heated discussion, argument, get to a resolution and go to bed that night being okay with each other, to be able to come back in the next morning and we let's go do this again, get back to work sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's actually really hard to get in the founding team, I think, to get those complementary skill sets. You can have those hard conversations and then be good with each other by the end of that to keep building this business. There are so many startups that the founders break up. That's also where they fail. So even before you get those first 10 team members, those founders need to be getting on. Yeah. And then you go beyond that, and again, you want some more complementary skill sets that come in, but you're also hiring for that attitude. When you're hiring those people in, that is creating the culture. You can do whatever you like when it comes to, our mission's this and these are our values. But if those 10 people don't epitomise that same thing that you're looking at, or they don't bring something extra to the table that's we need that thing, we're missing that thing, we've found it within this person, then you're also in a problematic position. One bad egg, and I've seen this and experienced this myself in those 10 people can cause a massive wedge, whether they're trying to, like, whether that individual is playing a political game, whether maybe just their skill set isn't up to the task that you initially needed, whether they're just like not quite the right fit. All of those things can cause them to come out like a bad egg. Maybe they're just like not ready for a small hustling startup where they don't have those same frameworks to work from like they would in a corporate.
Sure.
Many different reasons why they might not be the right fit, and that bad egg actually brings everybody down. And so then output is worse because there's like this little riff in the team. You're like, where'd it come from? Like, I have had this in the past, and when that's happened in the past, you're like, it's incredibly painful. But when that pain is removed and that person leaves, it's incredible to see the difference of like how fast a team can move and how much more enjoyable the workspace is for that team when that bad egg isn't there anymore. And again, like, I want to make sure I'm clear on, a bad egg doesn't mean that they are a bad person. It might just be that that's not quite the right fit for what you're trying to accomplish. And it's just so much more important in that first group of 10 that they do all get on and they work really well together. Because if there's any wedge in amongst that, as you get, like, if you're a team of 100 and you have a bad egg, it's problematic. But it's not going to be catastrophic like it can be at a team of 10.
Sure. Yeah. I think it was Bezos who said, he'd rather interview 50 people for a startup and hire nobody rather than hire the wrong person.
Yeah.
Because it's so true. If you've got a bad egg, bad apple, and it really, really can very quickly, and I've seen it a million times, that mindset can infect the entire team. Yeah. And then you've got star performers who suddenly turn into B and C players, and then the entire thing fails. So the early team, they're the future leaders of the business if they want to go into management roles, right? And their mindset becomes what their team's mindsets become. It all trickles down, basically, right? So it's so important.
Just on that note, have you read the Netflix book on culture?
I haven't, no, but I know of it. I've bought it, actually. It's sitting on my bookshelf along with 50 other books that I haven't got around to reading. But it's got a big N on the cover, I believe.
Something like that. And I think without spoiling it, I think it's really worthwhile to read that to any of your listeners. That is a great book on, I think, on some of the things the ethos that they had around building their team initially. And one of the things around creating talent density.
Yeah.
And if you have a whole bunch of A+ people together, they make each other better. Yeah. But as soon as you insert an average, like a B, into those A+, the B doesn't come up to the A+.
Yeah.
The A+ get dragged down to the B.
Yeah.
And so again, it's so important to have those really ambitious high achievers together, because they're going to bring out the best in one another.
It's actually my favourite Steve Jobs quote. He said that it's really, I'm paraphrasing here, but it's really easy for a small team of A players to run rings around a big team of B or C players, basically. So it's not about, people talk about headcount. Oh, I've got 50 people, I've got 100 people. I'd rather have 10 people if those 10 people were Spartans and they could take on a massive army, right? That's what's important, quality rather than quantity. Okay, let's finish up with AI. You founded Bot the Builder and Journey AI. Now this was long before AI became everywhere with ChatGPT and everything. So what are your thoughts on Sam Altman and OpenAI and I guess the future of artificial intelligence?
Well, what to start with, when we founded Bot the Builder, try build an AI company in New Zealand in 2016. Good luck to you.
Sam Altman copied you.
Yeah. When we started to play around with that technology, we didn't actually young kids more or less that didn't really know what we were doing. But yes, we wanted to go down the idea was similar to that of OpenAI. We had no idea how to execute it properly, and so that's a whole nother story in itself. But in terms of where, in my view, where this is going, and granted I don't work directly in the AI field anymore, but obviously have an interest in it still. I'm really excited, man,
Yeah.
as to what can come. Like, you look at, let's even use what OpenAI ChatGPT is able to do at the moment for startups. If you are a young software engineer, you're just starting out, you can much more quickly identify and understand how to solve a particular problem by using a tool like ChatGPT. So now you are okay, so in unison with that, you're a startup founder and you need engineering capability. Do you need to go and get someone with 10 years experience, or can you get someone with 2 years experience coupled with these tools that is going to improve their output? And so you don't have to pay through the roof to get the same type of production. I think that's super exciting. That'll mean that, hey, how many more people, how many more businesses can be created, because it's almost like more people have resource to do.
Yeah, the co-pilots, they're massively helping juniors become intermediates, intermediates become seniors, and seniors become rock stars, or whatever cliche word you want to use. Yeah. Unicorns.
Yeah, tech ninjas, ninjaneers, another one. So I think that part's really exciting. I know a lot of people that are worried about it, and there's obviously like guardrails and probably frameworks that need to be put in place. But I think more generally, like, this will, plenty of people talked about this, but like, remove some of the mundane jobs nobody wants to do anyway, and hopefully, therefore, and also create a whole bunch of new jobs that weren't a thing 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and so rather than going back to one of the previous conversations about like work-life balance, like, empower a whole bunch of people to not need to have work-life balance, but have like a work-life integration where they just feel they're living their life. And AI can be, I think, a catalyst to being able to do that.
Yeah. Sam's ultimate vision seems to be like AGI. Do you think AI will ever become sentient and self-aware?
If I'm putting money on it, I'd probably say yes. But in terms of like, am I the right person to be commenting or predicting the future and this type of stuff? I'd say probably not.
Sure. It's fun to talk about that.
Yeah. Like, in terms of, I think the boundaries that OpenAI are pushing, it's really, really exciting. The stuff that even Google are doing as well. Actually, most of the big players, like what they're looking at in this call it the AI race that is going on. Bystanders sitting there like with popcorn, watching it unfold more than anything. Just excited to see what happens.
Yeah, cool. All right, thank you, man. Really good to talk to you about a number of things, from AI, Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, Michael Jordan, and beyond. Going through the archives there.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, that you scrolled back a decent distance, Alfie. So kudos.
When you run a recruitment company, you get used to doing good research on people. So.
Yeah, nice. And thank you for having me. It's been fun to chat.
Cool. All right. Thank you, man.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for watching this podcast. Make sure that you like, subscribe, follow, comment, etc., etc. And I'll see you in the next episode.